get ready to throw down.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Today we are going to start with a question that I got from someone else, and they're in staffing. And if you've done any networking or if you've been in the game for a while, you probably know a couple of people in the staffing industry because there's a lot of them. And his question was, how do you stand out when you are in a flooded industry or what everyone views as a commodity? And I walked up and I asked Clint this question before we turned on the mics, and he just got super excited, and we decided to turn on the microphones, and here we are.
Clint got super excited.
Yeah.
Did you say that?
Super is like, yeah. I mean,
Well, super excited for Clint. Is,
Yeah.
All right.
it means my eyes squinted.
Narrowed his vision
Narrowed
down.
exactly.
He's like, ooh, I got something to say about that.
Well, I mean, going back to kind of what we were talking about before the show was, and why I got excited is because I think that I'm also I think everybody views their own business as a flooded market. I mean, not many of us out there are going to say I'm the one and done. You can only call me. There's a few.
Mhm.
Wish I was a part of that business. Got to figure that out in life. But
It's
But,
short-lived.
but
It'll be flooded
yeah,
tomorrow.
exactly. So as soon as you get your name out there, everybody wants to copy it. So
Right.
I think everybody's has that feeling of, I'm one of 100 in the same room sometimes.
Yeah.
Staffing, look, every networking event I go to, there's multiple staffing people in the room. I mean, that's no doubt. So you definitely are in a flooded market if you're in staffing, and if your end product is the same as everybody else's. And what I mean by that is if you can provide the same service at the same price and the same quality, because to think you do it better than everybody else is crazy in my vision. Even in construction, which is me, to think that I can outbuild everybody and nobody else does it as good as I do it is pretty crazy thought. It's unrealistic. There's other people that do it just as well as you do. The front end relationship to me is what separates you. The rapport building, the trust factor, the personal relationships that coincide with the business relationship. To me, that's what really separates everybody. And look, everybody's not the right fit for everybody. So you got to find your fit, right?
That's why DISC is so important.
Agreed. And the conversations that we were having, myself and John, and before this were, I was literally putting it back on myself. I was like, maybe I'm the easy sell, right? This person was trying to sell to me, and we clicked so well that I don't make another phone call, right? And I was giving this lady praise on how well she did the bonding rapport and how much I trust her. And when I asked, she delivered. At the same time, I'm like, well, maybe it's me that she clicked with me. But that's the whole point, right? Is that she did click, and there is trust, and there is rapport, and now we're going to do business for a long time. I have a feeling. And the other three people in the same room that tried to sell me the same stuff, we didn't click. So I think you got to go find the people that you click and you can actually trust each other and build the bonding rapport with.
I think that's the number one thing. But as I'm sitting here listening to you, I'm thinking the very first product I ever sold, I don't know if I should say what it was, but it was a very common product, okay, in pharmaceuticals. And so to find the clients that are going to write for me for that product, it wasn't in the beginning about they trusted me because I was too new to them. And so it was identifying what would be the caveat that would move them forward. And what it was in this arena was they needed a reason to write that product, not because they trusted me, but I had to identify that. So where I'm going is sometimes I think the most important thing is trust, especially in longevity. But I think in finding the reason that they would write, and we can go on if you want me to, but I think it's really important that identification of what your what your client needs in the beginning is really vital. But always, as you work with them from the beginning and hopefully ongoing, is going to be trust. So I hope I didn't tangent too much, but I think that's really important to identify, knowing your client, knowing what they need. I kind of feel like I need to elaborate because maybe that doesn't make any sense to you, but in fact, I'm going to. Sorry, I changed my mind. Okay, so the product was cough medicine. And it was a prescription, obviously, but they could get a very similar product, OTC, over the counter. So I realized in order for them to write the cough medicine, which is what doctors want, they've gone to school, and part of the thing that draws their patients in is they don't want to go OT. The patients don't want to go to Walgreens or wherever to pick up a product necessarily. They want to be taken care of by the physician, and the physician writing a script. So I gave my product that I was repping validity, how important it is for your patient, and then writing it. So your patients are going to come in, so I think that's really important for you to find that no matter what you're selling, no matter what you're repping, I think it's important to, in the beginning, figure out what the caveat is, but always be mindful of, if you lose their trust at any point, to Clint's point, if you lose their trust at any point, then you're pretty much going to be done, because that is the most important thing, is just being truthful and being humble to that patient. To that physician. Okay, nothing about that.
So this is, and it's all good points, man. And what you're saying to me, like you said something a minute ago, is that's why DISC is so important, right?
Right.
And personality, psychological selling is what I believe that I focus on every day. I focus on.
You have to.
I focus on who my customer is, what makes their tires spin, and how do I help them spin the tires, right? How do I get them to their goal? Right. And if we go off the adage of, everybody's the same, everybody sells the same thing at the same price point, and you can get it from them just the same as you can get it from me, because that's what we're talking about today. That staffing business is very much like that. And we're talking about building the trust and the relationship and the bonding rapport. And how do you do that, right? Do you go out and you search for the 1 out of 10 that matches you, and you only stick to that one customer? That's a way, and that's very successful. And I think in the example that I was talking about, I found that one person that just happens to match me well. Now, those other 3 or 4 guys in the room, if they understand DISC personality, and not just DISC, but psychological personality, evaluations of who you're talking to, I think you can turn the tables a little bit, right? Now you're making it 2 or 3 out of 10, or 4 or 5 out of 10, because you're able to communicate with those people on their level, not yours, right? As salespeople, we go in with this agenda a lot of times, especially traditional sales. I think we go into a room and we expect everybody to flock to us and operate on the same wavelengths as us. And that's crazy, because good luck finding your other partner out there that thinks the way you do. That's tough. That's a lot of rooms to stand in. That's a lot of people to meet to find that person.
Very limited.
Yeah, it is limited, and you have to become a chameleon a little bit. We talk about that a lot here. Is realize that person is across the spectrum from me, and I've got to understand what makes them tick and be able to operate in that environment.
So, I think I know the answer to this question, but I'm going to ask anyway. In your example, the woman who was able to help you out,
mm-hmm.
built all that really good bonding and rapport in that first interaction. Do you think she's a D?
No, not at all. She's a SI.
Okay.
Yeah. But I think that she realized that I like to get to the point, and she brought up some examples of how, like, look, this is, I'm kind of, and she herself was, even as an SI, I think she was very tired of hearing all the same sales pitches in the room, and she was frustrated. And I caught her in a frustrated moment. And most of the time when you're frustrated, what corner do you tend to slide to, right? So I probably just caught her in her slide to a D a little bit, in that frustrating moment where she's just kind of pissed off at the world. Like, I've been to 100 of these, and I'm just done with it. I'm done with hearing all the stuff. So we vibed in that moment because we were both in the same spectrum, mm-hmm. right? So the thing is what she did to me was happenstance. It was in the moment. Could she harness that? Could those other people harness that and realize that that's how I like to communicate? Absolutely, you can.
So you're saying she didn't do it intentionally? She wasn't.
That's why I say it was kind of just chance, right? I caught her in that moment of conversation where it equaled out, and we'll probably do business forever. And in the times that I've called, mm-hmm. What?
But she
Now,
could
I
have.
see this vision of you two fluttering
Oh,
through the room
yeah.
of people mixing and mingling.
Sure.
And then just this almost
This-
this swan
sure.
dance in the middle.
But-
Okay,
So
but-
beautiful.
I mean, I hope that happens for somebody. I hope that happens for people.
So
Look at Clint becoming like the Kumbaya king over here.
isn't it good to see how a D can
Wow,
become an
man,
S?
dude,
And
you're sensitive.
I'm just thinking that maybe.
Just throw up in your mouth
Oh,
a little bit.
goodness gracious.
Sorry.
All right.
Let me wash that down with some vodka.
There you go.
All right, Ned.
Some of the best vodka.
But some of the best, and I'll tell you who it is
Uh,
if you'll sponsor us.
There you go. There you go. Everybody can have their name out here.
That's right.
So, Nan.
okay,
finish
so
your thought.
all I was going to say was, okay, so you're indicating that it wasn't intentional on her part, but it could have been intentional on her part.
Yeah.
And if you're cognitive of what's
Yeah.
going on in the room, then you can intentionally
'cause,
make that happen.
You're right. And the 3 guys that I talked to do the exact same, which is funny because it's in staffing. That's what she does. So the 3 guys that I talked to her to before that in the same room in the same networking event also did staffing, and it was like 2-minute conversations like, this guy, get away from him.
Well,
Get away from him.
But hold on though. When we were talking about this before, we were kind of talking about the idea that the other people you were calling wanted to put you through a process of some sort.
Well, they wanted to put me through the traditional sales ringer of, hey, let's go golfing next week. Let's go out to drinks. You need to meet if you meet my guy, man, you'll be so impressed. You'll buy from us for life. That's a huge turnoff, right? So that was that 2 minutes of
For a
talking
D,
about.
it's a
that's
huge
a-
turnoff for a D. But if you're talking to Al
Okay.
and I,
Okay.
he's like, all
Quit
right,
telling me who I am.
you're not an I, Al.
But that's a good point.
But I mean,
That's a good point because truly that might have motivated me enough to have a second conversation. For me, that pushed me away so far because I'm like, hey, you're just trying to. I'm trying to get sold here, you know. And so my point is that those 3 guys, if they would have realized that I got turned off, they could have switched the conversation. Like, oh wait, before you run off here, hold on. You know, they could have saved it,
Yeah.
right? But they didn't because it's like, oh, that guy doesn't fit with me, so I'm going to go find somebody else that does, and they're going to bounce around that room. And we always go back to this: how scalable and efficient is that model? That you got to go bounce around a room to 500 people, and then next week do it again and again until you get one, and now you've talked to 1,500 people, and now you got to do 3,000 to get 2. That's my problem with that model, right?
With these other guys that you called that wanted to put you through the process, a lot of, hey, let's go out to dinner, have drinks or whatever. Do they still think that they have a shot at your business?
One of them probably does.
Okay.
Because he was the first one I talked to, and I probably let him off a little easy
Okay.
as a buyer. The second 2, I was so done with it because I just heard that speech and then I heard it again. Like, look, man, you know what? Just forget I called. I got to move on here because I need some commitment. So I'm out. And it was just like, well, you know, hold on, wait, you know, and just click, just hang up and just get out of it because it's not going anywhere, right? They tried the same speech on Thursday that they tried on Friday, and they tried on Monday again, and it's just not working. Change up your pattern, right? Obviously, it's not working. You're not getting down the road. Don't try to save it last minute after you've screwed up 4 times. Like, it's too late now. You've already shown your true colors to me.
Mhm.
So that's me as a buyer, right? But I mean, easy sell if you adjust, right? Because we were talking about this, John, is that we're easy sells if you adjust.
well, I think
Absolutely.
hold on, and I think you guys just hit on it. Most people are an easy sell if you'll adjust, or you'll get the no,
If they
and
have
you'll
a,
move on.
if
Yeah.
they have a need and you have a solution,
Absolutely, they're gonna
You're-
say, "Let's give." Yeah, sure, makes
Yeah.
sense to me.
Yeah.
You know,
if they're in the market for a Cadillac and you sell Cadillacs, they're an easy sell as long as you adapt.
Absolutely.
exactly. And there's the key. There is that if you'll stretch to get across to the other side, meaning to the client side, or your
Or maybe-
prospect side.
Or maybe even in your own your own quadrant, right? Because a D to a D is a tough sale. It's a tough sale.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's not easy just to walk them because you got to get. And we've talked about this on a couple episodes, but you've got to almost let yourself slide out of that
Yeah.
position a little
Get out of
bit.
the
You
ego.
got to become.
So it's not. Sometimes it's always not adapting to who they are. It's adapting out of what you are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Right.
That's a good point. Very good.
Do you think
point.
a D to a D is the hardest of the selling to
no,
the
I
same?
think a C
it's a
to
sword fight? Actually,
I think it's a.
Huh?
It's
know,
a sword fight.
I think I said that on here a while back, and the more that question has come up and over and over again, it's probably a C to a C.
See,
Because like if your facts and facts don't line up,
Love it. See my spreadsheet. No,
Yeah,
see, I
no,
see your
no.
spreadsheet,
You're-
and I
I mean, what happened?
W2 spreadsheet.
What
Well, if the
happens when
information's
what
accurate,
happens when
that's
you're 2 pennies off? Can you come to an agreement that one's right versus the other?
see,
We already said
I,
C.
it doesn't really work that way. It's just I want exact, precise
In our
information.
in our mind, it does.
I know.
From the outside
Yeah.
looking in.
We need
Bro,
that
that's
meme
what
of
we
like,
see.
here's what a C actually is. Here's what my mom thinks I am, and all
Yeah.
that stuff. I just want clear, concise information, and you can bet I've already done the majority of my research. So it's almost redundant. I might have like one or two last questions, but I've generally already done my homework. And if you're a C, and you just give me that information, and then we can move forward. I'm good.
Yeah, and I think that naturally we want to say like a C to an I is a hard seller, a D to an S is a hard seller because they're across the spectrum. But the fact is that C's need I's and I's need C's more than you could ever possibly imagine. Same with D's and S's.
Completely agree.
So like I need a moral compass, right? I have to have a moral compass in my pocketbook. Otherwise, I'll burn the world down, right? And for no reason. So I need
So
somebody.
start with Vegas. It'll just be this
Exactly.
forest fire coming out of the center
Yeah.
of Vegas that swallows the whole U.S.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't die till it gets to the sea, right?
Absolutely.
I concur. This is so true.
So that's why I don't jump in my mind to when you say what's the hardest sell personality wise. I don't say one to the other across the board. I say probably in the same quadrant most of the time is hard sells.
Well, okay, so
An eye to an eye, you never get anything done.
Well, that's what my I guess real question was, but I worded it badly. Do you think a D to D, I to I, S to
Yeah.
S, or C to
There
C
you
is the
go.
hardest?
I probably would, yeah. To sell to your own quadrant is probably pretty tough.
But of the four choices, D to D, do you still think that C to C is the hardest sell?
Man, I do because that world's so foreign to me. So that's kind of a skewed opinion, maybe.
I think you hit on something because I've been sold by an eye, or again, when people sell to me, a lot of times they're eyes, and they drive me crazy sometimes. Particularly like very high eyes that just want to
Very.
call me dude and
Tell
like,
us
they,
about
like,
it.
And
I
slide
know,
down.
exactly.
The-
Oh, really?
I'm
Elaborate,
like, first of all,
elaborate.
we're not friends, and I'm not a dude. I got the wallet. I'm writing the check. Step up. Give me a presentation. Let's quit trying to be best friends, which we're not going to be, and cut the bullshit. Get to the project. Because when I deal with a D or an S or a C, I get to get chatty, and they pay attention, and then there's a plan that gets kicked back my direction,
on the stage.
right?
Yeah, it's got to be about him.
Yeah.
He doesn't
Well, a
want
little bit.
anyone
Not a
taking
little
that limelight.
What do you mean?
If the higher eye comes in and they have their stories and they're kind of running over the top of
Yeah,
you, so
you
you don't
get-
get to tell your stories.
That's right.
Oh, but I don't whenever I'm sitting back. A lot of times, I get the first little introduction.
Yeah.
And then I get a chance to talk, and I do a little bit of that. And then the sales pitch comes back instead of going off on tangent after tangent after tangent, right?
Mhm.
So you got two guys tangential, right? How do we ever go forward, right? So 45 minutes, an hour and a half.
That's a great question.
Great question, because I'm wondering the same thing myself. but I
Somehow I find out how to make a buck in my way.
No.
Just saying. Somewhere along the way, Al made $1 or two. Imagine that.
But the thing is
Coming from the D.
as a high D, I have the same issue with a high I. I have the same exact issue, right? Is that I called this meeting. This is about me and my problem, and I need solutions. And now you want to tell me about, hitting the green with a putter on the par 3 on last week. It's like, dude, I don't give a shit. Like,
And
you're
you play
here,
golf.
and
I mean, you're a big golfer.
yeah,
Yeah, but you don't want to hear
but
that.
I don't want to hear
yeah,
it.
exactly.
I called this meeting for a reason,
Love it.
right? So let's get to that. And so I have the same issue.
And
right?
I do the same thing. I called the meeting. I'm the I. Sell to me, but sell in the way I want to be sold to. And we can do business because I'm not messing around. I'm going to cut a check. And I can make a decision. It's not the fact that I am the guy that decides in my company.
So now flip that, because we're talking about ourselves as buyers, which we all do a little
Yeah.
bit of.
Do you buy the way you sell?
Absolutely,
It sounds like Al does not.
I don't.
I do.
Or
and me and you,
we talk all day long and you don't get shit from me, right?
Yeah,
Because
that
all
could-
we
that could
did
be
was have a
true.
conversation.
Mhm.
Man, all right, that's a waste of 30 minutes of my life.
So I got an example of this just the other day. there was I was trying to find a plumbing partner, right, to go in on this job with me because it was just a little too big for us to handle. But if we could partner, take some risk off, we could put a number together, move forward, and we could probably take this from our big name competitors that are out there. And so I made a few phone calls, and people were literally saying things like, I can't imagine you writing me a check. I work hand in hand with you, and I work for the GC. Or you could just work for me and I cut you the check. And what's the matter? I have the relationship. Why wouldn't you want to just work for me? What's the difference? Who cares? Well, I just, it was a pride thing. Well, I don't work for another subcontractor. I go, okay, well, then you're not going to work at all. And so,
I love it.
Right? So hang up, do the next phone call. Same thing. Make the third phone call. Same thing.
Seriously?
I'm like, geez, really? And because I'm in a different market now. And the market that I had was very, very much operated. Hey, I'll work for you this time. You work for me this time. And who cares? Let's all go win. Yeah. Let's go take over the world. And the market I'm in now, it's very you or me or.
Why do you think that is?
Well, I can say because Houston's a gritty place.
Oh man, it's cutthroat.
It is.
Man.
It is the grittiest business environment in the state of Texas.
Yeah,
and healthcare is
no
the
doubt.
same way.
And I would say it's probably a lot like your Chicago's and your New York.
I almost said Chicago, man. It is like
I operated in Chicago for a while. It's terrible. It was all who you knew, right? It was. I hate to say it, but it's underhanded deals. It was like, hey, who can pay me the most? And I hate that's a thing.
Got a lot of that too, though.
Yeah, I think it does. I don't know that for facts, but I see it, and I'm making my own assessments here. But no, but I finally made a phone call to a guy, and I was at my wit's end, like, well, maybe maybe we have to back out of this job because we can't find the right people. And so I made one more phone call, and it was recommended by some people, and the guy asked all the questions that he should have. Hey, what's the chances that you're going to get this job, right? If I'm going to put my money on your company, you got to give me some information back for me to go ahead and do this job. Ran me through a very rigorous process. And I am all for that because that's how I sell myself, right? I expect nothing less from the people that sell to me as I sell to somebody else, right? So we ended up getting through all the smoke, and we're partnering together on a job that we're all going to go do together, right? But those other people didn't say that stuff. Mm-hmm. It was pride. It was, I can't work for you, or I would never. You hear these big things, right? But this guy was like, well, I would if you guys have this. Do you have that? Have you thought about a budget? Did you already budget the job and now I have to live with the budget? I'm like, no, man, you're setting it. Okay, well, that's a pro instead of a con. So you can tell he's writing this stuff down on the phone with me. And then after I think we have a done deal, he sends me an email with 50 questions. Hey, what about this? I'm like, you know what? Those are questions I didn't even ask my customer that I need to know. Hey, appreciate it. Now I forward that on to my customer. We get all the answers back. And now we're even a better team because he made me better. So, yeah.
But don't you have a moment, though, as a D of like, come on, man, trust me. I'm going to take care of you. I don't know why you got to answer me or ask me all these questions.
So I said that. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. No, I said that on the phone. I'm like, look, man, just trust me. I vetted this customer out.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not calling you because I'm wanting consulting. I'm calling you because I want a partner. Yeah. I've heard that before. So in his defense, I would have said the same thing. Yeah, I've heard that before, but
I think you have to be really smart. That's not playing smart if you don't ask.
Exactly. So I said that. Absolutely. As a high D, I'm like, dude, trust me, man. I'm a professional at this. I know how to do this.
Oh, I'm a professional. I think.
Yeah. But in my head, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I know how to do this. I wouldn't make this phone call.
I'm a professional.
Yeah. You kind of tighten the tie a little bit.
Yeah,
like, hey, man.
Exactly.
Trust me.
And he just shut it down. He was like,
He did. He shut it down. And what's funny is most people, I think most personalities would have been like, this guy doesn't want to work together. Click. Whereas it's the exact opposite. He wants to work together if everything works out.
Sure.
Which is the process that we preach and that we do ourselves.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's smart.
Yeah. If you're going to give something, you need to be getting something back.
I agree.
Right?
Well,
sometimes it's pay. Sometimes it's just pay. You provided a service, I got pay.
But I'm talking about before that.
But bonding and rapport wise, you give, you get.
Well, let's just say testimonials. Well, I would like to talk to some of your other clients.
Yeah.
That happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you're gonna do that,
Absolutely.
get something back in return. Okay, when I let you talk to all the people who love me, what happens after that?
We have sex.
And you're still getting a next step
No,
for giving something up.
Because he actually brought up the point to where he said, I've just never done this before. It's uncomfortable for me, which is the same answer that I got from the first 3 phone calls I made. They just didn't dig into it, right?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, there's the key.
Mhm.
If you're talking to somebody and something comes off not quite right to you, don't throw in the towel.
Yeah. Dig.
Stop for just a second and wonder. First of all, why did it make you feel uncomfortable or unhappy, or however you felt it wasn't on the positive side of things? But then wait a minute. Don't have a knee-jerk reaction to something that could eventually be worked through if you question and answer and then come to find out, well, his motivation was really in the right direction. It worked out well, put money on the table for both of us. Who's complaining at the end of a deal like that?
I think you just summed up my entire conversation with this guy. I really did. Like
Well,
there was empathy there.
You
right?
called me by mistake, but dial me, I just pretended to be that guy.
Oh.
Dude, you don't have a deal going forward. Sorry.
So basically what you're saying is just speak with clarity what you need, what you're.
Well, we all try to speak with clarity. What it is when something gets in the way of that, where you're unsure and it's something new, don't immediately draw back like it's not
Like
worth
a 2-year-old,
doing.
like a 2-year-old. I mean,
Go
that's
back.
silly.
Yeah, that's that knee-jerk reaction of it's
Like, oh, well?
unfamiliar to me, right?
Yeah, and I think that sometimes, and I ran in this with some of the formal training that I've had, where it was, ask these questions. You can't move forward because you set a process, right? I can't move forward without this question. Make sure you have a reason why you're asking these questions, not just because it's on paper, right? Because if they're any good at vetting you out, they'll ask, why do you need to know that? And you better damn well have an answer, right? And you better really truly need it, because you might have just screwed up the entire process.
That comes from like that need to know in the military side of things.
Yeah. Why do you need to know?
Why do you need to know? Yeah.
And the answer
that's
is
an important thing to ask people. You just brought out that's a light bulb moment out there, guys.
Because budget is one of those, right?
Yeah.
So when you ask about budget, what are you trying to get out of it, and why, right? Because in my business, I don't need to know the dollar amount. The estimate that I'm about to do is going to spit out the estimate, and we're going to live with this number. I'm not putting out a high number to cut it down and weasel with you and try to negotiate with you. I'm putting out a solid number that we can live with. My question is do you have a budget, and is it approved, and do you have the funding approved? That's important to me, not the dollar amount.
And another important thing kind of jumped in my mind. A lot of times you can front run your question with, and I'm sure you're asking yourself why I'm asking this question, right?
Yeah.
Why do I need to know this? Well, here's why. So give some explanation, particularly when you see that prospect sort of bristle or pull back, or you're feeling that, and stop yourself.
Yeah, that's one of the few times that I break silence. Sometimes it's to let people think on what you just said is a golden. You can't. Salespeople tend to want to talk in silence, right? That's one of the few times that I'll break silence, is the why, right? When I ask a question, it's like, hey man, what's going on with your budget with this job? And I see everybody pull back from the table, cross their arms, sit back in their chair, all the chairs squeak at the same time. The feeling, right? And they're all staring at the ceiling on, how do I answer this, right? And am I going to give the answer? And that silence goes longer than about 20 seconds. The natural salesperson in me was to want to keep talking through that. And I let this 20 seconds happen. But this is one of the few times that I break silence and say, look, guys, I know this is an uncomfortable thing for you to talk about. It's uncomfortable for me to even bring this up. Here's why I'm asking what I'm asking. It's because if you don't have all of this, then we're not talking about a real project. And I'm doing free consulting, and so are you, right? But if you do, and this is a real project that's going to happen in January, and that's locked down, and the bank says, go for it, go get me 3 numbers, I'd love to be one of your 3 numbers. Nothing wrong with saying that in my book, in the business that I'm in.
I completely agree with that. Completely. John, not looking past Nan, because I'm going to come to Nan, but how do you approach that?
I kind of have this thought process around that you should be digging in on stuff that you think works in your favor as much as you do when it doesn't work in your favor, right? And this is slightly tangential to what Clint was talking about, but I can't stop thinking about it. But let's say, can we talk about your budget? Yeah, sure. And they give you a budget. if the salesperson hears a number that they think works for them, they just start fist pumping, right? They're like, oh man, got this.
Got it.
Right? Where if it's too low, oh, how'd you come up with that number? You know, does this mean that, you know, we can't work together if it's 20% higher, you know, or any of those different strategies? But I kind of feel like if you are digging in on that, asking that same question, no matter what kind of budget they're talking about, right? Whether it behooves you or not, still stopping and being like, how'd you come up with that number?
Sure.
Right? To be kind of positioned as not just like the guy who wants to sell you, but the guy who really wants to understand.
Mm-hmm.
And to your point, Clint, but I think that goes back to like your setting of the frame, you know, framing the conversation and setting expectations at the very beginning of it.
Yeah.
I got to ask you some hard questions.
Yeah, and I hope that I don't hope I do it pretty well. Is that I have banged that into their skull so many times beforehand, before we even have the meeting, that I don't have to set those expectations. Hey, and if it's an expectation setting in the front of the meeting at all, it's because maybe there's a new guy in there that doesn't know me as well. It's like, hey, John and Jack, they know me so well. Look, man, it's going to be off-putting to you when I ask them these questions, but they know me, right? And and those guys will kind of make a joke out of it, like, yeah, he's going to ask me tough questions. And I'm kind of reiterating things, but I'm also making light of the situation. I'm about to ask some hard questions. That's my personality coming out. That's not a write it down on paper and go use this thing. That's what works for me, right? And I just try to I reiterate only because there's a new person in the room.
See, I go the other way, and you and I have argued about this in the past.
Absolutely.
If there's a break in the conversation, or say that I got a 5-call sales process, I am going to be reinforcing my expectations on each one of those calls, just to make sure, hey, has anything changed, right?
Yeah.
Because it tests my understanding. It still forces them to come to the table to have the real conversation.
I think they both work, because I operate under the gut feel a lot more. So the gut feel is, to me, is that if you're not being honest with me this time, and I find out that you're not being honest with me, you're dead to me. It's over. This entire relationship is just completely over. You do that by trying to seal the deal up front. And I do it a little more on, like, I'm going to go through your process. If you ever lied to me, we're just done. I mean, forever. And you're not going to drag me on, because once I get a bad feel, I'm just out. That's a very different fact, gut-driven mentality.
Yeah, that's fair.
Question.
Can you use it in a sentence?
Exactly. Sounds like Pictionary.
The question.
So when you're in one of these scenarios where you know, you've got something negative that shows up, or you're doing the proposition, how do you go about dealing with those situations like John and Clint just described?
A negative situation.
Well, one where you're you know, you
Here, I'll give you a scenario.
yeah.
Thank you.
So,
Help me out here.
so like if you ask me, hey Clint, what's your budget on this job? In so many words, I know you phrase that a lot differently, but let's get to the point. You you ask me about my budget, and I kick back in a chair, I cross my arms, I look up at the sky and think, you know, you don't know what I'm thinking. I'm thinking a million things. Where do you go from there?
Well, I definitely think poor listening is miscommunication. So if I'm not listening to you, right, then prior to that moment, I should have already known what your response was going to be. I think it's really important to be able to read people. And so if you're sitting there and that in that moment you're completely confused, where you're like, do I say something? Do I not? Well, you should have, I think the steps to getting to that moment should have led you to know what to do in that moment.
Okay.
So,
And let me clue everybody in. Nan actually does a lot of foreshadowing a lot of times, and so she actually nailed it when she said she listens close enough to where she knows when she's asking a hard question. And a lot of times, with her nice nature and just the value that she has in that arena, she tells you ahead of time, this is going to be a hard question for you, which is a lot like when you say, hey, here's why I asked.
Yeah.
Right?
So
well, it's
very
kind of like
similar.
softening, you know, so softening statements. I know you use that a lot. Clint, you're really into the softening statements. I'm kidding, of course. He has no softening. Hello. He's like, what the
Well,
heck?
he
Wait,
wait a
you've been having
wait a second.
conversations with Clint,
He
not
does-
around the rest of us.
Well,
I'm
no,
kidding.
Clint does have one softening statement. It's when he whispers in my ear because it just goes soft.
Mm. All I know is y'all missed a really disgusting moment earlier.
All
They were
right, so
comparing
getting
beards.
back on track.
And by the way, Dr. Daniel
You
is
look at
preparing
this,
for
baby.
Christmas.
I actually have a
Going
part-time
hard.
job. Part-time job,
November.
baby, at the mall for the next couple of months.
Very cute. Okay, back to
Oh,
the,
And that's the dollar you made.
back to back
The
to
hard way.
So,
John.
does anybody have more on that topic? Because I have
Well-
another question
Oh, go ahead.
from the field. I
Oh,
mean,
oh yeah, absolutely. Do it.
so we all know this guy. I'm not going to use his name because he asked me not to.
Jim, Bob, Tom.
Well,
All
there.
of the above.
Okay.
So
Jim Bob,
he
yeah.
is landing
I know that
kind
guy.
of a whale of an account, a huge account, and he gets a white knight who brings him in. He's working all his channels and everything, and he gets invited into the office, and this guy is telling him, "Hey, I like you, but you got to convince my boss," and he is a hard ass, and he's very precise, analytical. He's gonna want your facts and figures and everything else like this. So, our buddy is okay, awesome, but it gets in his head a little bit. And he's
Mhm.
like, okay, this guy's a high C, and then they go out to dinner, and the guy shows up late,
Mm.
and he knows that this guy's a C, and he turns to him anyway, and he goes, "So you're the guy I got to convince, huh?"
Hmm.
And the guy goes, "We'll see."
Oh.
And
Yeah.
he was, and I was like, "Man, you knew this guy was a C. Why would you lead with
Say
that?"
that? Yeah.
And he's like, "I don't know. It just kind of overcame me in the moment."
Yeah. That's
Yeah, that's
But
not
we've
a
all
softening
had those
statement.
moments.
Yeah, I've done
We've
It's
all
not,
done
no.
that.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean,
100%. You will do
shit,
that
if you don't,
you're new.
if you're not at least got some nerves going on a big deal like
Oh,
this, hey, it's understandable. I mean, you can't fault people.
I
for
got to be
just-
honest. I'd probably said the same damn thing. Now that I'm thinking through that,
Yeah.
I might have said the same damn thing.
But okay, so hold
to
on.
me, then you are giving them
Here's another
such-
factor to this. This guy is an S, so he's not a D.
Whoa.
Oh,
So he went way out.
Yeah, he went
Was it
way
just
out
some
there.
nervous?
I don't know.
Yeah.
I dug in. I said, were you? And he's like, yeah, I was nervous, but
that's that
I-
problem with that D up statement.
well,
You need a D up. Oh, hold on.
the thing to
Make
remember
sure
though
you're good there.
that I don't think he's even thinking about is they're at dinner already, and there's some rapport established among the group, and everyone has
Yeah.
kind of let down their guards a little bit, and then this other
Yeah.
person walks in who's not
Yeah.
already steeped in that.
Typically, what I say in that situation is, hey, just to clue you in here, we've already been talking about some stuff. Let me tell you what I need to say is that we've talked a bunch. I think that we're on the same page. Sounds to me like we need to get you brought into the same page that we're in. You're saying essentially the same thing.
Mhm.
I got to convince you. So probably how I would say that.
Or like in my mind's eye, if I'm sitting at the table, I just want to make a nice formal introduction to somebody like that because I think it's appreciated.
Mhm.
And then
Like, how formal? Are you bowing?
Hello,
No.
Mr. Johnson. Tip of the hat, please.
No.
Let me get the chair
what
for
I'm
you.
saying
Yes.
is, I'm not sitting there with the boys. I say I almost take a different approach with let his clan
Mhm.
bring him up.
What
to
if they
speed.
don't?
Well, if they don't, then I sit and let it marinate for just a second because
agree.
we got the
I
entire
completely
evening.
agree.
I don't have to rush this
So
at all.
people driven.
Mhm.
So people driven.
But
I love
it's
it.
so
I'm here.
inappropriate.
I'm
And I
at
do
this
it-
dinner for a reason.
Exactly right.
Okay, I understand, but I want to see what your reason is. I want to see what you order. Are you drinking?
Thank
Are
you.
you
I
not
totally
drinking? Are you
agree.
having iced tea?
Yeah.
And I got to take my wine glass,
Yeah, I was
my
gonna
third
say.
one, and, slide it down, set it on the floor, and go. I'll just have water, please.
No,
I
but,
mean,
but
this
truly,
I'm
was-
waiting for you to show.
This was not mine. I didn't bring this.
I'm like, who gave me what?
because
Oh,
to
was
me,
that wine?
that statement that sweet person made is a slap. It's basically saying, "Oh, the reason we're all here."
Well,
That's just
Now-
It's just
you're
not
eating. You're
like-
sitting there.
like
well,
cheese.
for a second.
you can get that statement right though,
You can.
because it might be the guy that says, "You're goddamn right, you are. Let's see it," and you say, "Okay, here it is."
Well, okay.
But if you're anticipating the person walking in to be a C,
No, I agree.
Yeah.
No, I know.
And
what you're
even if
saying.
he's a D, he came to a dinner. He didn't come to a meeting. He came to a dinner, so he
Oh.
has a bit of an anticipation
Disagree. That
Disagree,
dinner is
yeah.
meeting. That dinner is meeting.
That D is definitely thinking of it as.
Yep. I'm
But he's
missing
still
And
time.
the
wanting
C
to
is
dinner.
too. The C's there a lot of times to gather some facts.
Oh,
he
yeah.
came to get what he needs to get out of it. He may have some
Why
social.
are we eating so late?
Yeah.
Is like my number one question. You know.
I mean, that's
I'm usually in bed by now. Make
exactly.
this quick.
Yeah.
Okay, so this leads me to believe we need to talk deeper about the disc because I'm completely confused why a D would come to a dinner, and now I'm hearing a late dinner, and you're telling me, Clint, that the D wanted to walk into the occasion and just wanted to take care of business.
Okay,
think
but
that's
wait, no,
weird.
no.
Do you think a D hangs out with their
Man.
workplace associates just for fun?
Well, then why did he come?
After
Nanette,
hours?
Nanette, we
sir.
do dinners with these doctors all the time, and they sit down, and sometimes they go immediately to gun.
But they still enjoy their evening.
I didn't say they didn't, but when they
that's
sit
on
down,
you. Whether
What do you
they
mean?
whether they enjoy it or they don't is on you. They came to the meeting to hear you out or to have dinner. It doesn't matter either way.
Based on what? So what is the scenario that you are?
I'm just saying that the environment that you provide for them at that point, they're spending time away from their family or not, it doesn't matter. Single, married with 6 kids, it doesn't matter. They came here to hear business. At some point, you got to get through some business. Otherwise, why are they here? And that goes for all personalities, right?
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
And business may be bonding a rapport, maybe the first step into all of this. That's okay, but eventually, at some point, you got to get there.
but I let them go there first.
Oh,
though.
yeah.
I'm not
Sure.
reaching across the table and
But-
going, "Oh, let's sit down and get to business."
But look,
Yeah.
but
You're late and we need to talk.
Right.
I agree, but
agree.
all different personalities. There's a couple personalities up here on this panel that wouldn't get to business just to see what you are going to provide.
I'm sorry.
I'm not gonna throw the first stone. I'm gonna sit there with my arms crossed until you bring
Oh,
me
Okay,
in.
Absolutely.
so hold on a second. So let's clarify for a
This
second.
is going off.
Yeah. In what position are you going to let someone just run their game?
I'm not.
Like, no, but you said a moment ago.
But you
I'm not gonna
said
turn it to
I'm not going to
business.
say. Yeah,
Well,
which is
I mean, no. If I come to a meeting, a dinner / meeting, doesn't matter. Drinks. If I sit down and I'm there for because somebody said, hey, you need to come to this
There's
meeting.
an expectation set. That's where.
well.
Well,
in
sure.
most
My line of
cases,
thinking is
there
going to
are.
go.
If you're
Yeah, I
sitting
was gonna
down,
say.
No, I
and with
understand.
your crew's already there, and you're
Exactly.
the decision maker.
if
Because you said, "Hey, you got to like woo the guy above me," and
so in
there's
this
the yes.
scenario, if this guy that let's say he worked for me told me like, hey, I've come to my decision.
Mhm.
This is all the facts that I have. This is our guy. I need you to meet him and approve this guy.
Yeah.
And I come to that meeting, I'm sitting down silent.
Well, no, but to Nan's point, right? Of the deed doesn't always know that there's going to be business discussed at a dinner. In this kind of, this is a whale of an account, right? This person is a COO, head of R&D and all this stuff. He's not going to a dinner just without any sort of expectation about what's going
Oh,
on,
100%.
right?
Sure.
So there's some sort of communication around, hey, like this is going to be a business dinner. So
Oh, I think everyone is cognitive of that. I just think the initial approach should be respectful to everyone, and it's not, boom, like throw up on them and then they
oh
run
no, I
away.
agree with that.
But okay, so shake hands. Hi, how are you? We all sit back down. You give it half a second, and you decide. You figure out who's talking first, right? Are they going to introduce me?
Yeah.
Are they going to talk amongst themselves, and I sit here and listen? Or is it going to get kind of quiet, like they're looking at me go because they're afraid of this guy,
Okay.
right? And they're not. So define the situation
Yeah.
in your own
No,
mind
yeah.
real
Alright, so that
quickly.
goes
You
back.
got 15 seconds,
Yeah.
and then you start,
But
right?
this
Or
isn't a-
you don't. You sit back because they're starting.
But
This
that-
isn't. I'm sorry, Nanette. Go ahead.
Okay, but that goes back to what we talked about a few minutes ago. You should not walk into, if you're the salesperson, do not walk into that dinner without having a plan ahead of time.
Oh,
You've spoken to this person, you've had this plan going. You're not just all
And I agree with that
willy-nilly,
too.
like,
Because
let's
sometimes I'll
just-
say, "How's this going to unfold?"
Yeah.
We're going to meet your guy. You agree.
Exactly.
Yeah,
I mean,
and
if you
that's got
don't
a
have
point.
plans, you
That's
have to have
another
plans.
approach too.
yeah.
You
Pre-call
have to have
plan,
plans.
right? What's the home run? What's
What
the
are you
base
thinking?
hit?
It's all the. think
How
of the
could
end in
this go
mind,
bad?
you know.
Yeah.
Bad. Will you let me?
Clint is squinting. I mean, so he has
No,
something
Well,
to add.
here's the deal, because the three of us all
What did
have to sit
Quentin
down
mean
and
earlier
plan
in the
out we're going to
conversation?
sell to Clint, right?
Well, but
Quentin
the
meant something for Clint
Look at him, he's
earlier. What
crossing
was
his
that?
arms, man. Dude, you getting upset here?
No, I'm
So
not getting upset. No,
you're-
no.
He's
I'm thinking.
called.
you talk about reading the
Hardened.
room, right? But the way that you read the room is directly influenced by where you sit on the scale.
Absolutely not. I know where I sit
Oh.
on this scale,
Of course you do.
right? I mean, you in a very quick
Dancing
period
on
of time, you figure out, are these douchebags across from me, are they manning up, or are they backing down because the big guy's here, and where do I need to fit to make this work? So I'm working the room.
But if you're an S, are you ever sitting down and being like, "Hey, are these guys going to back?" No, you're not
Well,
thinking
you
that
don't
way.
say that. Well, you
No.
should think that, though. Are my white knights going to run because they're wimps, right? Are they everything that they made themselves out to be?
Mhm.
Because now this is the first introduction to the decision maker. They've been playing their little VP roles. I'm sorry, that was for effect. And
The effect
now,
of flipping this table.
and now you get to see where the rubber meets the road, right?
Yes, but when you put the four of us in that exact situation, even if the dynamics are the same, the majority of us are going to walk away with a slightly different opinion about what's happening in that.
Agree. I'm just giving.
So
mine.
that's why I'm saying that I don't think the S sits down and they're like, okay, these guys are going to back down, and now it's on me.
I didn't say they were going to back down. I'm going to wait and see what happens.
Prior,
And then if nothing happens, I'm going to have to make something happen.
I want to reiterate.
Right?
So I want to reiterate prior
Long way to get there, but yeah.
Prior to
Sorry, Nanette, go ahead,
no,
Nanette.
it's fine. Prior to going to this dinner, I've talked to everyone. I haven't like
Well, you
scheduled a
say-
meeting, but I
Hold
know,
on,
I
let her
know what
finish
I
her
do.
thought.
I like to talk to all the different people, and it's over a period of time. It's not. I don't.
Not
run
always
into-
possible, but go ahead.
Of course, that's acknowledged. I mean, you don't
Sometimes-
necessarily get to talk
sometimes
to
not.
everybody. Go ahead.
Well,
Nanette.
if I haven't
Continue.
talked to them, I better
I canceled the dinner. Sorry,
I-
guys. I got a stomach ache. I can't show
No,
up.
I think you should know your players. It's like-
Diarrhea. Works
it's-
every time.
Dr. Daniel, stop. You know your players. It's like, has anyone ever played
Player.
chess
Hold
before?
on.
You know what your pawns are supposed to do. You know
Agreed.
the game. It is, and I don't even like saying game because I don't think it's a game. You
But
just
Nanette,
need
I have to challenge this.
to challenge.
You
Go
walk
away.
in
I mean,
and
go ahead.
people are there. You know this guy. You've met that guy one time. Here's your big contact. It's only one guy usually.
I do
Right.
the opposite. I do not want anybody else's opinion skewing what I'm
Yeah,
about
we've
to
talked
do.
about this.
I'm not
I
talking
do-
about opinions. I'm
No,
not talking about opinions.
No, I'm saying that you do some upfront research, right? I tend to, when somebody tells me this is the guy you have to sell, boom, there it is. That's the guy's name. He's at the top. I don't want to know anything else. I just give me a meeting. Just get me in the room. Like, stop telling me that he's this. Stop telling me that he's that. I don't care anymore because I'm going to form my own opinion in the first 20 seconds. And I'm going to know how to do this without skewed opinions.
I disagree. An office manager wants to bring her physician in front of me, right? I'm like, well, how long have you worked? I ask about them.
My hand's still out here.
I know. But you-
The
I thought he was
decoder
gonna
has
ba-
not
I thought-
yielded
I
the
thought you were gonna
floor.
recoil it back and hit me in the mouth with it. Actually, so after a second, I was like, "Is this gonna mean dental later, or just a fat lip?"
The gavel
right?
didn't drop. Okay, good.
So okay, you want to know nothing. I want to know enough, and then what I want to see, because here in the back of my mind, I take into consideration this woman or man works for this woman or man, right? That I'm calling on, and so therefore, I'm gonna glean some information, but they're gonna give
I'm
it
with you
to
there.
me because of where they sit in
Yeah.
the hierarchy.
I think recon level stops at some point because opinions can skew what you think of a person's personality. I think that happened in this point, right? So they got a lot of information up front about who this person is,
Mhm.
right? From other people that don't
Yeah.
know the business that you're in,
And
right?
people slide depending upon their role.
Sure. So when you hear three opinions of, hey, if you know disc at all, what quadrant would you put him in? Oh, I put him in an I. I put him in an S. I put him in a D. And you're like, well, shit. Now I'm really confused going into this meeting,
Yeah.
right? So me being what I would like to think is a more well versed person in disc, I don't want any of those skews.
Okay, but wait a second. But people usually say he's a jerk, he's hard, he's really
Sure.
nice.
Oh,
Okay.
He's
never listen
sweet.
to
You
that.
just described
Never listen.
you just described disc.
Well, I understand, but what I'm saying for our audience
Wait, who's
is
the jerk?
exactly
Who's the jerk?
is that
Okay.
that people are going to use other adjectives, but
No,
you
yeah.
associate them with those
That's what I'm
quadrants,
saying.
right?
Okay,
But go ahead, Nick.
what I was going to say, never listen to another person's opinion.
Of
That
course
is
I do.
complete BS.
Well,
Of course I think
you should-
I mean,
that's
that is the
really-
most
About an-
non-S statement I've ever heard in
I
my
know.
life.
No,
Okay,
of
like,
course
can
you do.
Can I finish?
But then you come back and go,
I
he's
don't
not such a
know.
bad guy. How many times have you met somebody that was supposed to be the biggest jerk, and you look around and you go, well, I get it. He's got some rough edges,
So,
but
my-
not as harsh as I thought
to
I was.
my
gonna say.
I'll
point-
just turn into Tony Soprano up here. Hey, what?
Yes.
Linguine.
So what okay, so can I just say, what I meant by don't listen to other people's negative
So only
rant
listen to the positive.
about no,
That's her
no.
Christian, like, everything's great.
All
coming out.
right.
Oh my gosh.
Dan, finish your thought.
Deliver me.
And then it's
from
time for the
this.
throwdown.
Man, but okay, so all I'm saying is understand what the person that you're interested in most, what their protocol is, not their emotion or if that person thinks they're a jerk, but what for instance, I'm going to real quick. So I have a client who you don't go in their office thinking you're going to bring something all lovely, what's lovely? I don't know.
Snicker
Starbucks,
bars.
the Snicker bars. Okay. You're going to bring in some Snickers and you have to get permission to do that. You don't just think you can come into the office. I didn't know that, but I found I learned by asking questions what's protocol for the office. And that kind of information is vital because I didn't know that. And then if I would have done it, it would have been not okay. So I'm not asking for emotions. I don't want to know what someone thinks about Clint or what someone thinks about Al. I need to have my own opinion, but I do want to know what they find to be acceptable in their office.
No, that's a good point.
All right.
It is.
Let's go to the throwdown.
And our throwdown today, sponsored by.
What are we throwing down on? I guess.
Well,
either
okay.
one of the two
So
questions.
look, the thing is, one of the things that we talk about constantly is personality assessment.
Yeah.
We talked about that the entire time.
Mhm.
Whether or not you're trying to differentiate yourself from your competitors, building that upfront rapport, trust, leadership skills, like it's all in there, right? People trust you because they think that you are the leader of your group and they're the leader of their group, so you want to do business together. I mean, that's kind of the hierarchy of trust, in my opinion. So we're talking a lot about assessing the person across from you, making judgments on what you think of them, not what other people have told you about them, right? So that can really go down a dangerous path of when you accept everybody else's opinions and you run with it. So form your own opinions. Do your homework, as Nan was saying the last few minutes, is do your homework on things that are acceptable. Even Doc hit to it as business practice of, formal greetings. What do they like to see? That's all good stuff, right? But form your own opinions at the table. Really look at who you're talking to next door, across the table from you or on the phone, and just say, okay, this guy operates in this world. You know DISC, or you should know DISC, and if you don't, we'll get to that later, right? But know who you are, know who the person is across from you, and operate in the terms that are agreeable. And that goes with whether it's the first conversation you ever have or the last conversation you ever have.
Okay. Al?
Along the same lines, you're going to gather some information along the way, or you wouldn't be sitting at the table to have that big dinner with 3 or 4 people. There's one decision maker, and if you don't know enough about him, you're going to have to use other people until you meet him to get your information. They will give you the information from their point of view as to how they relate to that individual, meaning the decision maker. At that point, listen, like Nan said, which is the biggest part of communication, to what they say, and then match it to what you see when the guy walks in, sits down at the table. And from there, call bullshit on them or agree that they've made a decent assessment of the guy that they set in front of you, and this is going to be easier rather than harder. That they don't fear the guy, that they don't loathe the guy, that they're not propping something up. So it's smoke and mirrors sometimes. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's straightforward, just like they said. But your job, if you're good and you want to be good, is to decide all that in a very short period of time. As you're conversing, as you're deciding whether there's after dinner drinks or whether you're just drinking coffee and getting the hell out of there and scheduling another meeting, or you're going for the no or the yes right there at the table.
Huh? Nanette?
So I think we're all basically going to say pretty much the same thing with this question, but I think whether you're talking about business or relationships like marriage or you're with your children, I think it's really important to understand who you are. Clint said that, and I went, yeah, exactly. You know, if you don't know who you are, then you're batting with. I mean, that's just ridiculous. You're playing golf and you're playing with one club. If you can understand, you figure out who you are, have confidence in that, and then understand who you're working with, then you can get a symbiotic relationship going no matter what the DISC is, whether be it you and what they are, and you can be successful, be it again in marriage or with your kids or with business, because if you don't know how to deal with people and understand people out of love, I don't even think it's out of smoke and mirrors. I think it's just really how you deal with each other. I think it's vital. I think it's really important. I love that we're discussing this, and I hope that you find value in this and that you want to find out, because it's so about life. It's so cool. I love it.
Well, okay. I'm going to go the opposite way, that because I know that everyone's expecting me to say research, and plan.
Yeah.
But as C's, it's so easy to get lost in. I need it to be perfect, and I need every detail, and it's got to be just perfect. And that's a lot of pressure. And so I kind of take the Clint approach, but not with the same thought process of I'm not going to spend too much time researching, because I can uncover the majority of that in a quick conversation, and get to knowing to where I need to go to have the best conversation that I can. And that keeps me from spending 4 or 5 hours researching and trying to perfect it, and then because that can lead to having too much of a plan, and then if that doesn't go according to the way you want it to, then the whole meeting is shot. So Clint and I are kind of on the same page there. I know that everyone's expecting me to say, oh, I spent 17 hours going through spreadsheets and everything else about people before I meet them, but that's just not the case, because it's not good time
Now, what's a spreadsheet? No.
Yeah.
I'll leave you with a little cliffhanger. And what is perfect? Perfect is, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Signing on the line, which is dot.
All right.
Awesome.
Yes.
All right, everybody. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, y'all.